Hey there, it's Simon Hurley from Inklipse and welcome to another video. Today I'm sharing a technique using the new alcohol lift ink on your alcohol ink backgrounds to really finish off your cards and get some really stunning effects. This stuff is definitely a game changer with the alcohol inks and creates some really awesome effects on your cards. Now I did want to share I'm not creating any alcohol ink backgrounds in this video, but I did share a video recently showing lots of different techniques on how to create some fun alcohol ink backgrounds. So I'll link it up on screen here so you guys can check that out before you watch this video if you're interested in learning how to create the backgrounds. But without further ado, let's jump in and get started with this alcohol lift ink. So let's start off with something pretty simple just to really share how this lift ink works so you guys can get some fun ideas, and then we'll jump into some more advanced techniques. So I'm using this background here that I created just by swiping my alcohol ink tool, and I'm on Nuvo cardstock here, and this is a really nice dark background so you guys will be able to see everything that we're doing really nicely. So I'm starting off with an image from the Flower Garden stamp set. It's a really nice lined and detailed image. And then I'll bring in the alcohol lift ink here, and we're just going to ink up this flower. So I'm just making sure to apply lots of that lift ink. And it's just like a normal clear ink, so if you tilt it and you're able to see that nice shiny ink, you've got it nicely covered. So I'll take this, I want this to be kind of centered there, and then I'll stamp that down. So once I have that stamped down, you can't really see too much yet. But before I move on and really lift that off the surface, I want to take another piece of cardstock here, and I'm going to take my image and stamp it down. So this is just a regular piece of cardstock, and this is something really cool with this. So I've created kind of a multi-tone color with that, and you get a really cool stamped effect. So moving on to this background here. I'm going to take just a piece of paper towel here, and I'm going to fold it a little bit. And you're just going to want to kind of tap the surface of that flower. So this is just removing the ink, and as I do this, I'm moving around my paper towel so that you don't stamp kind of the same color down over and over. So I'm getting a new clean area every time. You're starting to see some of those lines form. So once I'm able to see the lined image and kind of a faint image there, I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna start rubbing that image then. Really lightly with this paper towel, just kind of rubbing that ink off. And that'll remove that alcohol ink and just create that really nice effect. And you can see, even though it's that nice clear ink, you still get all those awesome details from that stamp. Alright, so this was just a pretty simple idea. I just wanted to share kind of how that worked really easily to lift that ink off the surface and get that really nice detailed image, and then transfer it to a new cardstock as well. Okay, so next I want to share how to lift the ink off on kind of a larger scale using a background stamp. And I'm also going to share how to do a fun spotlighted image technique. So I'm going to take my background stamp here and use my MISTI stamping tool. So I'll remove out the foam area so we can do our stamping with the rubber stamp. So I'm going to take this and line it up in the corner. And this is a background from the Holtz Dots and Floral collection. I really love all those florals in there. So I'll pick that background up, and then I'll put my alcohol ink background in the corner of the tool. Then I'm going to take my alcohol lift ink and just cover this whole background stamp with lots of ink. You want to make sure it's all nice and covered. And again, you can look kind of at an angle to make sure all the ink is covering that stamp since it's nice and clear. Okay, so then I'll make sure my image is in the corner there, and I'll flip it over and stamp this background down. So I just want to give it lots of pressure so it stamps nicely there. We can always stamp it twice if we need to too. So I'll lift it off of the background. You can see it's already starting to lift the ink, which is really awesome, and we got all that color on there too. So I'll set this off to the side and we'll lift the ink off in just a second. But I'm going to take another piece of cardstock that's the exact same size, and I'm going to take a little hello sentiment. So this is from the Sizzix Thinlits set here. And there's lots of different sentiments in there. I'm using the shadow, and I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of adhesive and adhere it to the back side of this die cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to adhere it kind of in the center. And then I'll take this and put it in the same area where my other background was. So then I'll take the stamp and I'll flip it over again. And I'll apply lots of pressure on that. And then lift it off the surface. Then I'll lift this die cut off too. Look, we got that nice and stamped. And then I'll also just line it back up in the corner there and finish off the stamping. So that die cut was just kind of blocking it from transferring all the ink. But then here is a fun background too, and I'll finish this one off in just a second. So now to lift the ink off of this larger background as well, I'm going to take another paper towel here, and instead of dabbing on this one right away, I'm just going to take it and kind of take the whole surface and just kind of pat around on here. So this will lift off the alcohol ink that's on the surface. So see, we're already lifting off lots of that image there. Fold it over and do the same thing again. Just apply some pressure and kind of, instead of just taking all those little areas, it'll take a long time. So just kind of blotting off that whole surface. And then I'll pat a little bit of that color off there, just by going around and touching the surface. But then I'll just take my paper towel and I'll just start kind of rubbing off the ink. And you can see it really lifting off a lot of that background color there. But you get still that rainbow flower background, which I think is super cool with the alcohol inks that we created. So you want to make sure to keep kind of flipping your paper towel to make sure you're not getting just spreading around muddy color. And look at that stunning background that you've created. So you really lifted off that background ink there, but it leaves behind this slight tint of color and then that fun kind of floral arrangement with the background there. So then I have this die cut that's stamped with that same alcohol ink. So this is the reverse of the background that we created in the back there. So this really highlights the sentiment, but still creates a really awesome background too. So I'll just take two other die cuts here to make it kind of stand out of the background with some strong liquid collage matte medium. And I'll just adhere all these together by stacking them up. So this is just going to create a little bit of dimension and highlight the sentiment by raising it up a little bit. So I've applied lots of liquid adhesive to the die cut, and I'm just going to take it and line up the white spaces on the stamped die cut with the background here. That'll help it line it up really nicely. So here's that fun card. I just popped this up on some foam tape and put it onto a card base. And you have that really nice background with that color that's removed, and then you took that removed color and stamped it in the center for that hello die. So I'm just going to take this, and to finish it off, I'll add some Nuvo crystal glaze over the sentiment. I love doing this just to kind of make the sentiment stand out on your card. Especially if it's really simple like this too. So I always add a thin layer of this Nuvo glaze. You barely have to squeeze the bottle and you get quite a bit out. So you can lay a thin layer of that, and then you just want to let it dry off to the side. So that'll just make it a little bit cloudy for now, but once this is all dry, it'll turn nice and clear, and that'll just make the sentiment kind of jelly-like and stand out from the card. Okay, so now that we've created that background, we're still left with this stamped background, and I'm just in love with this. It's so cool that you can use that lift ink to lift off that alcohol ink and get a whole new image from your stamped backgrounds. Because you can never do like that with ink pads and get this really unique blend like this. So that little background that we stamped had that hello out of it, and thankfully that little Tim Holtz shadow die also comes with the little lined hello too. And I really like using liquid adhesive when I'm layering up these dies, just so I can kind of make sure that they're all aligned, and I've got a little bit of time to kind of move each little die cut around to make sure they're all really nicely lined up. So you can see you've got that fun die cut, and now it's got a little bit of dimension since we've adhered some of them together. So we can't add the Nuvo glaze to this little tiny die cut because it'll kind of flow off the edges. So I'm going to use some clear mark ink pad, and I'll smush this all over that die cut there. Make sure it's nice and covered. And then I'll take my clear embossing powder, and I'll just throw over a little layer of that embossing powder. So So we've got the first layer done, but I'm gonna add a little bit more of that clear mark ink. Then I'll take my embossing powder and I'll just throw another layer of this on. So now you can see you have that nice shiny die cut, and it gives a similar effect that Nuvo glaze does. But you don't have to wait for it to dry, and it's easier to create this effect on delicate die cuts. And then I'll take my sentiment and put it right into place inside here. So it's really cool that we've stamped that little shadow, and we'll just create that little space for it here. So I'll just fit it right in to the little bubble that we created. So I've just added this onto a card base now, and I really love how this looks with that simple black sentiment in the center and this fun stamped background. And I really think this is so special because you couldn't get anything or any results like this with an ink pad. So doing this with that alcohol lift ink really creates a cool look for your card. So like I said, I really love the results that the alcohol ink gives because you're really creating a unique effect that you really can't get with a regular ink pad. So I'm going to use this background that I've created kind of as a palette or like an ink pad to lift the color off the surface and create a really cool stamped effect. So I'm using this beautiful Bouquet stamp. This is a giant stamp with tons of flowers and lots of detail on it, you can see here. And it also comes with its own acrylic black because it's so big. So I'm going to take my alcohol lift ink here and I'll ink up some of the stamp that I want to use. Just apply lots of ink. And then I'll take this stamp and I'll place it kind of in the corner here. And I'll stamp up like this. So this is just going to lift off some of that color, transfer the color right over to the surface. And then I'm going to stamp this onto my background. So that's just regular cardstock. You can see that fun color you get with that Bouquet being stamped out of just this alcohol ink. You get those really unique pieces. So now you want to make sure this is nice and clean. So I'll take some ultra clean cleaner, which will clean my stamp really nicely. And I'll just kind of wipe this all off because it's a clear ink pad, so you want to make sure each time you go back in that it's still nice and clean. So I'll take a different part of the stamp. I'm going to use this piece this time. I'm just going to ink this up. And we're going to go in from a different corner. So I want to use this corner of the stamp this time. So I'll stamp that down. It lifted up some of that ink. And then I'll go into here and I'll stamp that down. So you get that really cool effect. And I can continue doing this. So I'll just take my stamp. I'll make sure it's nice and clean. Then I'll go in here. Maybe I'll do some of this here. So I'll ink up that portion of the stamp. And I'm going to go in with this section. So since we didn't lift off any of that ink yet, it's still kind of like a full ink pad really. I'll stamp that in from that corner. So you're really building up this bouquet of colors there. So I'm going to use this sentiment that says, always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. And I just love this handwriting from the Handwritten Thoughts. This has a lot of cool sentiments in it. So I'm going to take this image, just going to stamp it down in some black ink to really make it stand out from that background. So I'll take this, I'll ink it up with that black ink. Then I'll make sure this is nice and lined up. And we can stamp this down kind of in the center there. Okay, so here's the finished look of that card. I love that background that we created with that alcohol ink background, using it as kind of a palette for that beautiful bouquet stamp set, and then stamping that in from all around the edges. So you create that really detailed and unique background, and that really nice simple black sentiment on top finishes it off well. Alright, so I hope you guys really enjoyed that video showing some of my favorite techniques using the alcohol lift ink. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up, and also leave a comment down below letting me know which card was your favorite from today's video. If you want to see more videos like this from me, be sure to click that subscribe button as well, and click that little bell down below too to make sure you get all the notifications and never miss a crafty video. I'll see you guys very soon in another card making and crafting video. Bye!